Okay. All right. We're on. Yeah. You stole my line that I stole from you.
Sorry.
Oh, no. Welcome, everyone. It's our next edition of Design Unfiltered happening right now, live, in person.
This is it.
Wow.
Yes. We've got an incredible guest, Nick Gould, who's with us today. I'm going to wait to do like the main intro until we get some more people that come on the stream so we can introduce you properly.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll just kind of let people filter in, take a seat, get their cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever it is that you're drinking or imbibing right now. While we're doing that,
please go on.
I was going to say, should we dish about our Design Unfiltered event that we had last week?
Just what I was going to say. There you go.
Yeah.
This is our first stream since our live event last Tuesday, Fabric in Tribeca. Great evening, really fun. Thank you to everyone that did come. Thank you to everyone that purchased a ticket and came along. Really cool sort of networking and ice-breaking style events that we did to kick it off. I felt like I'm sure it was similar for you too as well, where we're in a bit of a mad rush on the night of just kind of making sure things are organized and happening as planned, which can be a challenge to balance that with like being in the moment and speaking to all these great designers that made it out. But I did get a few moments myself personally of just, having a couple of cool chats, and the panel part obviously was a lot of fun for me too. But I hope you guys got some moments to like take it in a bit more, have some good chats in between all the amazing organizing that you were doing.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I feel like I was running around like a mad woman, honestly, between like the door and the food and the name tags, and we had some people who arrived earlier before everything was ready. So but it was really great. I got to see a lot of people I've known for so long, but like haven't ever met in person. And I was somebody I'm really impressed by everyone's like fashion sense. I feel like the designers,
snappy dresses.
Snappy dresses, like really cool stuff. I was like, damn, I need help. Somebody help me. But I had a good time.
Well, I thought you looked wonderful. I don't think you need any fashion coaching whatsoever, for the record. I love the moment. So Jared, you were up talking with the panelists, and it was so quiet, right? So everyone's like really leaning in to listen to the panelists, and the subject was WTF, aka what the fuck is craft. And so we had three amazing panelists that were talking about what the fuck is craft? And everybody was just leaning in. It was just like this very like poignant moment, and me and Erica were wearing high heel boots. And I'm literally like tiptoeing in the back because everybody was so tuned in. It was really great.
Yeah.
And this moment that Erica and I had, because we set up an icebreaker activity before the panel. So we took feedback from the first one, and the feedback from the first one was like, hey, great event. Maybe the panel could be a little bit shorter and have more time for networking and have people, relate to each other, which was great. And so we made this icebreaker activity where each person got a different colored dot on their name tag when they came in. And then when it was time for the icebreakers, they'd each go to an area on the floor that was the color of their dot. And so they were just kind of mixed matched with other people to talk about something to do with craft. So there was like different questions that were laid out on the floor. And when it was, this is the first icebreaker that I've ever done. Is that the first one for you, Erica?
Yeah.
So we were virgins to this whole thing. And as people were talking and getting along, like me and Erica were literally like in the back,
so
like, oh my God, it's working. Like people are talking. So that was really fun.
It was nice. We got some great live feedback that this was one of the best events they've been to, that they were just like, even like disregarding the topic on the card that we gave, but just like learning from like a VP of design sitting next to them. This is their first design event, and we love that stuff. I personally I love that connection, like wholesomeness, I guess. I think we nailed it.
Access to sometimes, which was kind of the idea of this stream in a way, was to give people access to people they might not normally get access to, or to be able to speak to. And Yeah, that was like our in-person version. And then with the icebreaker style activity, it encouraged, or like in a good way, forced that access where they was sitting in these groups and communicating and coming up with these answers to our prompts. Yeah, that's awesome. That doesn't always happen. It's pretty rare on the street to have that opportunity. And then if you don't work alongside those people, when would you maybe mix with them?
Yeah.
So yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, totally. And Nick, I think one of the many reasons we're excited to have you on board, and why it's so great to have people of your kind of leadership level and your experience to come on board. And I've heard people say this about Design Unfiltered, these live streams, is that you really are able to jump into your brain and to build that relationship really, really quickly with somebody like you, who's able to talk about kind of like, the struggles that you've had, or things you had to overcome, or, what are some words of wisdom, or just things that you learned along the way. And so people have said, like, that can sometimes take like years of investment in a relationship to learn that from someone who might be like your immediate manager, or somebody who's like at that VP level. But to have somebody here who's just like laying it on the table and really sharing all those learnings is just like saving those 2 years of investment of time, and just like really getting to the heart of the matter.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm here to lay it on the table.
Yay.
100%.
Lay it out.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm going to formally introduce you to everybody. So everybody, as you're filtering in and you join us, feel free to say like, where are you calling in from?
Ryan's already on it. Tay's there. Yep.
Hey, Ryan, Chicago. Tay Duran. Awesome. Great. So glad you were able to come. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you, Tay.
Yeah.
Tay had a really cool shirt on.
I was just about to say, Tay was our snappy dresser. Great shoes, great shirt.
Oh,
thanks, Tay. Bringing some style.
Nice.
Why not? Wasn't critical, but certainly appreciated.
Hey, it is the design community and it is New York, so those two things together. I remember when I worked at a .com in San Francisco, and everybody would like go to the New York office for a few months, and they'd come back just like gorgeous. Like, oh my God, what happened?
Got rid of their Allbirds.
And then Leslie Hampton, thank you for the suggestion on the color dot. That is a really good point. Some people may be colorblind. That's a great accessibility call out. So thank you for that. Love it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So Nick, drum roll, please. So Nick is someone that I'm really, really excited that we have. We're all excited to have you on the show today. I've known you for many years. We met when you were at Designit. You were the managing director of North America at Designit,
right.
So which was a client of ours at the time. And you were always just so lovely and accessible and just great to work with. So I felt like we had a nice kinship back then that's continued through the years.
Yes.
And Nick is a executive coach, first and foremost, with his own coaching practice, Nick Gould Coaching, where he leverages his background in product and design. And he has the distinction of being the CEO of one of the first ever UX geared consultancies named Catalyst Group.
Catalyst Group, yep.
Yep. And then became the president and COO of Cooper. Did Catalyst turn into Cooper? Is that?
Yes, Catalyst was bought by Cooper, and we merged and operated the offices in San Francisco and New York, both as Cooper.
Okay, gotcha.
Nice.
Gotcha. He was a former president of IXDA here in New York. Wonderful group. Sad that they're gone now, but what a wonderful group. I mean, amazing conferences every year and such a great community.
Yep.
And then most recently, he was in product leadership roles at 2U and Udacity.
Yes.
And as a coach, he focuses on all sorts of things. And we're excited to dig into that with you today, Nick. But you have a special fondness for design, product, and technology folks, since that's where you come from.
Yes.
You can support all different sorts of profiles in your coaching practice. And I love how you say all the hits, like you focus on helping clients battle overwhelm, uncertainty, inner critics, imposter syndromes, all those hits. towards
and more.
towards locating a professional path that is rewarding, satisfying, and fun. So welcome to the show, Nick. We're so happy.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for that kind introduction. Yeah, it's really great to be with you all today.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. And you're in Brooklyn, right?
I am in Brooklyn. Yeah, for those who know, I'm across the street from the Greenwood Cemetery, which is like an amazing, massive historic cemetery. Here in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Wow. Nice. Okay. Great spot.
Yeah. I think they give like midnight spooky tours there, like in Hollywood.
And crazy like circus events and movies and art installations. It's a great space. If you're in the area, you should definitely come check it out.
I love that.
Cemetery, cultural hub.
It is. People used to come in the old days. They came here to have picnics.
Yeah, right.
It was the only place to come to get out of the city.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow, that's a different era, different level of comfort.
Totally. Totally.
So while people are saying where they're from, Erica or Jerry, do you have any questions you want to ask the group? And then Nick will ask kind of a maybe like more coachy question too, but anything that's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to chime into the chat around something that they would want to ask Nick, I think that's coaching related. I think the topics that you mentioned there, Joanne, that you focus on, Nick, overwhelm stood out to me. Like that's a really interesting thing at the moment. And I guess as so many designers, I think that we work with in particular, and many that join this stream have worked in maybe earlier stage companies, or, you're in this tech space where got to do everything all the time and career and progression. And I think there's a lot of overwhelm there. So yeah, I think if anyone is thinking about things or is curious about, maybe something that they're dealing with, has dealt with in the past, then it's just drop it in the chat. And while we talk, at least it's there and we can come back to it. If we don't get to it straight away or instantly, like at least you've got it in there. So yeah, I think just that, I think give us a pulse on like what you're feeling, or what stands out to you about this.
Yeah, and that could be like a full question, or it could just be like one word, like overwhelm.
Yeah.
I was going to suggest we've had some very weird weather here in New York. So it's being really hot to really cold to pouring rain. So I was going to say, like, coming into the space right now, like, what's your internal weather? Like, how would you describe how you're feeling? For me, when I think about it, it's like I can see like a really dazzling, beautiful blue sky with fast moving clouds moving across it. So it's that time of year where it's like warm in the sun, but still chilly in the shade. And for me, that kind of reflects the up and down, mood. Like things are going great 1 second, then something, maybe you have like a setback and you feel crap for a minute, coming in and out of that cloudy space. So how's everybody else feeling in terms of their internal weather?
Yeah, love that.
I mean, I think I'm described recruitment.
Yeah, I was like, I think
it's a roller coaster.
I'm in a cloud and I'm like, can see the sun that's there. Surely it's coming out in a minute.
You don't know how to dress. What should I wear?
No.
Yeah.
I wore a very wrong coat yesterday.
Uh-oh. Only New York.
It had holes in it. Wind tunnels.
It just wasn't right.
You know what I had weather-wise the other day that I think is maybe some form of analogy. It was definitely a cloudy day. It was misty in the morning. I'd worked from home. I lived just up out of town by the Hudson. So a bit of an ordinary morning. I don't love that weather. I love sunshine. I love brightness. I like warmth. I'm Australian, so I can't help it. But anyway, a bit of a gloomy day. And I was just chipping away, working through the day from home, just doing my best to kind of get through a few things. And then come the afternoon, I'd kind of gotten through a few tasks. I was still deep in it, but the sun came out and it was a warm enough kind of day. And now our days are getting a little bit longer. At about 5:30, the sun was out. It was warm enough. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to jump on my motorcycle and I'm just going to cut a quick loop. I go over I live by this bridge. You go around the bridge, around the loop, and just come back. And that was it. And it was awesome. It was 10 minutes or whatever, but I've barely been riding all winter. And that felt amazing. And that is like the days that, I guess that weather that I feel some days, it does start a bit ordinary, or it can be tough to work through it during the day. But if you put in some of those harder yards, the sun comes out, it's warm enough, everything's going to be okay. Get a little ride in. So
well, that story is also a real testament to the power of getting outside, right? Like when you're feeling like you're in a rut, getting yourself moving, getting outside, some air in your lungs and your muscles moving, even just for a few minutes, just like as a fairly well-known tip for the group. Like if you're feeling stuck, just go out, get on a motorcycle, get on a bike, get on your feet. It's hugely impactful.
You know what's so cool about that too? I took a walk the other day. I'm up in my country place, and I was like, I'm feeling really shut in. I got to take a walk. And as soon as I left the house, there was this huge V of geese that were flying north after the winter, and they were honking, and it was this beautiful chorus of all these geese. And it was just this moment of just awe, of just being in nature, being a part of this fabric of life. I felt really connected to everything. And when I came back in and had this conversation with a candidate that I hadn't met before, he's like, hey, how's your morning going? And I'm like, it was really awesome. Like, I just
it's pretty good.
Describe these geese. And it opened up the conversation in a totally different way than if I had just been like, oh, yeah, I don't know, TGIF, or whatever. Whatever it was.
Every day.
Yeah, but it just, I don't know, it opens your brain in a different way. I think it makes the synapses fire in a different way.
I don't know if you felt this way, but doesn't that also feel a little bit like you were kind of invited out, and once you were outside, it's like the universe or providence or the world was kind of welcoming you and greeting you and saying like, it's good that you're here. Let us show you this incredible thing, right? And that kind of lights something else up inside you.
Yeah,
I love that story.
I love that. Do you feel like in your coaching, Nick, that you are dealing with people who are kind of in the stakes? I feel like a lot of people that call in, or people that we talk to in our recruitment practice, and I'm sure with your coaching practice, are feeling that kind of sense of like shut in, or, feeling like they've got to send things to LinkedIn, a million times a day. Like, what are you seeing out there?
Exactly that. And I think, people, in our cohorts, broadly speaking, are pretty familiar with the importance of paying attention to self-care and wellness, and whether it's like spirituality or exercise or nutrition or whatever kind of path in people find. But there's also almost like a contradictory narrative that's like hustle, grind, go deeper and never stop, and that if you're not at the desk 24/7, like you're missing an opportunity to move some objective forward. And so I definitely try to remind myself and other people too that you're going to do better if you can find space for that kind of openness, like openness to the world, to being outside, and even like other parts of yourself, right? Like I have a lot of discussions around, how important it is to get up and read a book for 15 minutes, right? Or go see a friend, or engage in some other aspect of yourself that reminds you who you are, and that you're not just like a single track human moving towards this one particular goal. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but doing that gets you in a much better space, a much better energy, and better motivated to accomplish the thing that you're trying to accomplish. So yeah, we talk about that. We talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
I wonder if I feel like it's pretty widely known that, taking a walk, separation from the screen for a minute, it makes you better at doing it. But I still feel it's a little few and far between to hear about companies or work environments where they almost, for lack of a better word, mandate it. Like you have to go and take a walk outside for 15 minutes today. Or you hear about managers maybe encouraging people to do it. I know some are a bit more directive, like, hey, take a walk. It's beautiful outside. Like, you're good. Go take a break. You don't need to be grinding right this second. Like, I don't know why we're not pushing it more in a good way, in a positive, encouraging it more. And everyone knows it's so beneficial, but instead it's like, what's your output?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of dueling narratives, right? I mean, people believe in what you're saying. Absolutely. They know the impact that it can have. But at the same time, the pressure to grow, the pressure to hit numbers, the pressure to, show up in terms of your role and in a way of making like maximum effort, it feels like it's kind of non-optional. So it's a little hard sometimes to balance those things, right? And I'm sure we've all had the experience where the self-care narrative is being voiced by certain quadrants of the company, but but the grind, get it done, faster narrative is often being voiced by your team, your manager, or other parts of the company. And so kind of integrating those things. I think some companies do it extremely well and it's baked into the culture, but others are still trying to figure that piece out.
Yeah. Well, I think a way to think about it is that not that it's like counter to the process of doing your work, but maybe to think about it as like it's a part of the process. Like it's actually a really important part of the process. And I'm thinking about when I made my Interstellar Songbook albums with this producer, Andre Fratto, in the city, his process, and he was, a really experienced producer. He did a lot of like soundtracks and he's a composer, really. And his process was that we'd do our work for the day. I'd be in the sound booth and we'd be doing, hours of work. And then he would watch, like I'd go home and he'd watch the news, like bake in watching the news because he enjoyed the news. His brain would just kind of put pieces together in a way when he would step away from the work. And so when he came back to the work, either later that night or the next day, he would hear it in a different way. He'd have different ideas that would come to him because he was able to disconnect from this sort of energy.
Yeah. I'm not sure that watching the news these days would be a good do, but
that was a different administration, right?
Maybe some other activity to take you away. But,
Go back to war.
Unless you thrive in chaos.
Right. Listen to music or, something like that. Cook a meal.
Yeah. Do some crosswords. Yeah.
There you go.
Totally. Well, sort of in the same vein, I really loved, so Nick makes awesome posts on LinkedIn. So if you aren't following Nick on LinkedIn, do yourself a favor, connect with him, link in with him, follow him. He's got great just nuggets of wisdom and just things to take away with you through the day to think about. And I really loved the one that you posted today, which was a picture of your office on your birthday. So your birthday's coming up next month. So happy early birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
And 2 years ago, your office was completely decorated from head to toe with, birthday stuff. They had your team put your favorite minion over your door. And it was just this really lovely show of love and appreciation for you.
Yeah.
You could talk a little bit about that post and what that post was about.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I ran across this photo. It's actually more than 2 years ago. It's a few years back now, back in the Cooper days. And it was just an over the top effort, on the part of the team to put streamers and all the other stuff. And I walked in and saw that there. And yeah, it was incredibly, incredibly moving. I mean, certainly as a leader, as a team member or colleague, even that kind of connection is unbelievably gratifying and, not exactly common. So when you find yourself in a place where people are, willing to put the forethought and the energy into showing some appreciation or recognition for you in that way, it was a big moment. And discovering that picture, having, forgotten about it, for some time was really amazing. And it occurred to me that for a lot of reasons, that kind of thing doesn't really happen so much anymore. I mean, of course, there's a big push to get back to the office. And so more people are back in the office than they were maybe a couple of years back since the pandemic. So there's at least an opportunity for it. And I'm sure, and I know that this goes on in some places, but generally speaking, for the people that I'm speaking to now, I think the atmosphere is just a little more fraught, a little more anxious. People are very concerned about, kind of where they stand in terms of their career or their role in a company. And that makes it a little bit harder. It's like the air is a little cooler. And so it's harder to make those connections. It's harder to feel like you want to invest in relationships because you're not totally sure that you're still going to have them, in a year or two going forward. So my invitation essentially in the post is to just try to find ways to make that connection, like leave space for people to be human beings. Don't just if you're on Zoom calls all the time, don't just jump on and get into business. Don't, leave yourself time in between or a buffer inside of the scheduled call. Have a little bit of curiosity about who someone is. And if they're, I often find that people will signal that they have something that's on their mind or something that they're kind of going through or carrying. And when we all see that, we have a choice to kind of sort of nod along and say like, oh, well, yeah, good luck with that. Or we can take a second to engage and say, well, what's actually happening there? And particularly if you're a leader, you can say, well, let's table the agenda for a second and let's talk about this. Is there anything we can do to help? Or maybe you just want to talk about what's happening. Maybe it's something positive, like, hey, my kid just did something exciting, or my cat just did something exciting, or I have a new cat, you know. And so just like making space for those kinds of connection opportunities, I think is really critical, and is a little harder to do now because we're not always kind of walking by each other's desk all the time. So that was kind of where I was coming from, as well as just reminiscing, you know, about a moment that was a great moment, you know, for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm struck by what you said too, when you said, we don't know if we're going to have those relationships in a year or two, right? I think that's just the reality of the time that we're in now. Like, are these going to be your coworkers? Are you going to leave? Are they going to leave? And I think maybe there's some space, like just the idea that came to my head when you said that was like, well, maybe you can make those relationships last. Like maybe they won't be in the same office forever. I mean, maybe they could. But, you know, I think who you choose to stay in touch with, you do have that choice. And those relationships can be really powerful. I mean, you and I have known each other for you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, something like that. You know, so I think those can be really formative relationships.
I agree, and it's also such an important thing to do, just even from a career mindset standpoint, like to not see yourself as kind of trapped within the job that you currently have today, or like bounded, caged in. Some of the closest friends that I have today are ones that I made at companies that I've worked at years and years ago, and we had things in common. We stayed in touch, and the relationship kind of grows in a totally different way outside of where you originally met. And having done that, you now have, I mean, from a practical perspective, a much bigger network, more people to turn to if you need support or ideas or connections. Just someone to have coffee with and say, I need a little motivation, you know, or some affirmation of, you know, what I'm able to accomplish here in my career. And so like a bigger world, a bigger group of people to stay connected with is so valuable.
Nick, have you ever worked with some of those people again, like in the future?
In terms of people who I've worked with in the past and like come back to them?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Well, whenever I have the opportunity, I always do. In fact, some folks that I worked with at Udacity were people that I knew from 2U previously. It so happens that prior to that, with the kind of Catalyst, Cooper, Designit progression, it was like one company that just went from one state to another and kind of like grew and took on more and more people. So we were like the blob that blobbed itself even bigger. But it's a huge thing that I'm proud of in terms of my career, is that people that I worked with at Catalyst Group, you know, way many years ago, were still there years later, like at Designit, even after I left Designit. So we went through this journey together, and those relationships are powerfully strong. I mean, a lot of people that you know too, Joanne, John Mizell, and others. I mean, we worked together in different settings, more or less, but continually for a really long time.
What are some of the secrets to your success in terms of keeping in touch with people long term? Because I feel like that's something that I personally struggle with, where it's like I meet all these people in my job, and Jared and Erica, you do too. It's like, how do you kind of surface them at the right time? How do you keep everybody how do you keep everybody top of mind? You can't keep everybody top of mind, but let me just make it a really simple question. How do you keep in touch?
The thing that I've noticed, and this is an observation that maybe will resonate with other people, is that if a long period of time elapses between your kind of contacts with somebody, like maybe it's months or even a year between even like a LinkedIn chat or a quick email exchange, it can feel like that's not a relationship. You know, how could that really be a relationship if so much time passes? But what I've come to find is that everybody's kind of in the same boat. Like, we have a lot going on. We're busy. We're distracted. Time has a funny way of like sort of, contracting and expanding. And I can connect with somebody, even if it's a year since we last spoke, and still remember that this is the person who I had a relationship with, that I knew, that I worked together with, or we had that great, conversation a year ago, and they introduced me to somebody who's really important. So it's not letting that assumption be an obstacle, and just say, like, when you think of someone, because we all have that kind of crazy brain where, like, you run across someone on LinkedIn, or they kind of go past your eyes in a way, or you just having a memory, like you see a picture like that office picture that I shared, and you think, I wonder what, Joanne's doing. Well, when you have that thought, just reach out and say, I'm thinking about you, wondering how you're doing. It's like a quick sentence, a quick check-in. It's so valuable, and people really appreciate that. Like, it doesn't need to be like a big, deep conversation. Just that like drumbeat, that maintaining that connection over a long period of time, you find that you're always brought back to the reason why you like that person and why you're connected to them. So, like with so many other things, I mean, in coaching and in other conversations, removing the thing that's stopping you from doing the thing that you want to do is like the key, right? Like, you already know you want these relationships. You want to stay connected to people. So there's a reason why you don't, and it's very likely some limiter or belief that you're like, they're busy, or I don't know what's going on with them, or maybe I forgot their kid's name or whatever. Just remove that thing and just reach out and be honest about kind of where you're at, and that you just wanted to stay connected.
I love that. And also too, I would say, I had a candidate reach out to me for a role that at the time we were kind of early on in the search, that the client was being really specific about what they wanted. So I said, I don't think it's the right match right now, but let's keep in touch. Like, I've known him for a while. Mm-hmm. And so some months went by, and then he finally contacted me and said, hey, it looks like the client hasn't filled the role yet. Should we talk again? Like, maybe there's some flexibility. And I was like, actually, yes. And I looked at his background again. There was some flexibility because the role had been open for a while. And when I got on the phone with him to screen him for the role, I was like, I'm so glad that you got back in touch with me and followed up, because I think so many people, and I do this all the time too, I'm certainly not immune, but I might be like, oh, they didn't get back to me. Like, they don't think I'm a good fit, or like, they don't want to be in touch with me. But that's not true most of the time. Like, I told him, thank you so much for doing that, because you really, like, you're helping me keep you on top of mind. And if it was still a no, then okay, what's the worst that can happen? You get another no, but like, not right now. Yeah. So I think there's a real power in Nick, what you're saying, like getting rid of that like insecurity, or like, oh, they don't want to hear from me, or like, oh, this is going to make me feel vulnerable, or if I'm going to come across as needy. It's like, no, if you can actually change that and like, oh, I'm actually going to help this person by being top of mind. Yeah. Right. It's a different perspective.
Yeah. I think it's a thing that holds people back from networking. Networking, which is like such like a,
it's becoming a funny word now, isn't it?
Gross term or something, but I mean, connecting, staying connected, what have you. But I think that's that thing. Like, the minute you're putting yourself in their head and thinking, oh, they don't want to hear from me, or they'll think that, or whatever, you should just sweep that away. Just do it. There's really very little to lose.
Yeah.
I always say that my to-do list is not your to-do list. So when I'm going through my checklist and I'm sending out my follow-up emails, I do that at 9 a.m. And people generally respond at like 3 p.m. because it's like the one time on their checklist that they can get to me. So just don't think about it. Like, I will say, I think recruiters all see your emails. We do. We respond to the ones that are, I think, the most urgent, depending on what we're working on that day for which client or whatever, in terms of scheduling. Some of us, I always try to respond to everybody, right? But just honestly, somebody reached out to me the other day too, and I'd been trying to think of this person and I couldn't remember their name. They reached out to me and they just like came into my life again. I was like, oh, thank you. So
came back into my
help
life.
us. Yeah. And it's perfect. Yeah.
I love that.
Is that some of the themes that through your coaching, Nick, are you feeling like empowering people to overcome that hurdle a little bit of just reaching out or to use their network? When you're feeling maybe in some of that overwhelmed state, it can all feel a bit much, and maybe they've got this end goal in mind that they maybe are looking for work, and I should reconnect with people, and it's too much, and It's like, whoa, back it up. Like, it's just saying hello. It's just saying good day.
Absolutely. And I think that, we've all heard the term don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Right.
Or in this case, don't let perfect be the enemy of done.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the folks that I work with, they tend to be very high achieving people. They're all very smart, very capable people, and they care a lot about whether they're doing their best at whatever it is that they're doing. And they tend to be like planners, thinkers, strategists, etc. We know who we're talking about here. So the idea of just kind of having like a low effort plan of action, like where you're just going to make a connection and you don't really know where it's going to go. You can't really plan the outcome. You don't know whether it's going to turn into something important or significant, or even what the next steps might be. But what you do know is that you gotta do it. Like if you don't do it, then clearly the one certainty is that nothing's going to happen there. And so getting over that hurdle of like, I need to have the whole thing in mind in a plan or in a strategy before I can take some action. In this case, I mean, there are cases where you do want to do that, obviously.
Sure.
But in this case, that's not the way. Like the way to do it is to maybe think of it just more. You're more open. You're more curious. Yes, vulnerable in a sense, because what you said, Erica, is really interesting about my list is not your list. It's also like my psychology is not your psychology. My state of mind or my emotions are not yours. So I might be thinking, oh, I'm reaching out to Jared because I secretly want him to know that I'm looking for a job. And I'm going to say, hey, let's get a coffee. But what I really want is, hey, can you introduce me to somebody who's hiring, et cetera. And you think because you're thinking that Jared's going to know that. And because he knows that, he's going to think some kind of way about why you're reaching out to him. Like you have some motive. I don't think that that's the way people work. Generally, I think people are just like, hey, good to hear from you. What can we talk about? What can we share? How can we help each other? Yeah.
And I love the story about how you and I, Nick, had coffee. Maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago. It had been a while. Like, hey, let's get together. Haven't seen you. Didn't really know where it was going to go. It's just like, hey, let's reconnect. Let's just see what comes of it, or just to see each other again, right?
Yeah.
And then I was telling you at that time, like, oh yeah, I've been doing this Design Unfiltered for over a year. Well, now it's over a year. It probably wasn't a year then. But I love being more public, and I love giving back, and I'm really enjoying like sharing my knowledge of all these years I've been putting into this work. And then it was because of that conversation that you had me top of mind. So first it was like me kind of stating what my desires were, like having my goals and my dreams live in language, because nobody can guess what you're thinking or what you want until you tell them.
Yeah.
Right? So me telling you, then all of a sudden it becomes this real thing. It got in your brain. And then you gave me an opportunity to be on this Job Quest vodcast, which you just taught me what word that is, a video podcast.
Yeah.
Which was really great. And then that sparked like me being able to share that with other people too in the future. And it was just such a lovely example of, share what's going on with you, share what's on your mind, because people can either be like, not do anything with it if they don't have anything for you, but it can also just plant a seed or something can come from it,
Yeah. And now, we've broadened our blob a little bit, right? Like Ryan, who is the creator of that podcast, is like, friends with me, friends with you, or connecting with other people, and the CEO of that company. You never really know where it's going to go. I think the big difference is, and certainly in that conversation that you're referring to, Joanne, like if you approach the connection from a relationship standpoint, just kind of genuinely curious about what somebody is up to, what they want to make happen in their life, like what is interesting them or what they're achieving, just for its own sake, like just to know them and to be connected. It tends to have more, I think, durability, like it's stickier. You feel like, well, this is an actual human to human bridge that we're building here. And then it becomes, you sort of like pay it forward, and it just grows and grows from there. So, it can be hard. Like I want to acknowledge that when you're under the gun to try to find a new job, or you're really unhappy in the job you have, that kind of like, like the image I have is like, it's a very calm, peaceful openness, and maybe that's just not really the state of mind you're in right now. but finding ways to change your energy, or to take a walk or ride on your motorcycle, or to just remind yourself of like why you're here, what you're trying to do, how you're going to get there. It's kind of like a long game and involves a lot of people. Potentially, it can feel more like you're integrating all of your goals and your different selves.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to acknowledge that it is a long game. You know, it's like lifelong. It just keeps going. I was going to say that quote, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So that's how I like to think about things too. Yeah.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Exactly.
I think about that one too very often.
Faradun was saying that on a post that Nick made that I commented on, or that I reshared the other day.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Well, everybody who's tuned in, we have about 17 minutes left. If you guys have any questions for Nick, please put them in the chat. We'd love to highlight them and answer them in real time. And Nick, maybe meanwhile, do you want to tee up a little coaching exercise that you had prepared for us? That would be great.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I was thinking about one of the things that I've been looking at a lot in terms of my coaching practice and kind of how I work with my clients is this idea of flow. So this is a design-centric community, so I'm sure you're very familiar with this kind of psychological concept. I think people apply it more in the domains of, creative domains, but also in athletics. So flow is like this, it's this idea of like thoughtless competence, like you're so aligned, you're so invested in what you're doing. And one thing I really like about it is that it's a balance of challenge and skill. So you are right at the point where your skill is meeting the challenge, maybe not quite. So you're motivated to kind of extend and get better and work a little harder and do more. But the challenge is not so far away from what you're capable of that it's like demotivating and discouraging. At the same time, it's not so easy that you get bored. So like that equilibrium where you're just kind of in the right moment, in the right place, and kind of time slows down. So that's, broadly speaking, this idea of flow. And so I've been trying to find a way to describe what most of the leaders that I work with are looking for, right? There's like a thing that they want. They want to feel like they are it's more than competent, but it's a sense of like always being in growth, always being challenged, but in settings, whether it's in a project setting or in like a one-on-one with someone who's on your team, or maybe even presenting, let's say, to a board or some other audience, that you're where you should be. Like, what you need to be doing. You have the skills that you need to have in order to accomplish that goal. And so I've always been trying to think of like, what is the metaphor or the word for that? And so I've been centering on flow a lot. And thinking, if you want to develop flow in your work, what do you need to do to get there? Like, what are the practical steps? And one of them is to identify what your flow conditions are. So getting better at saying, like, when am I most in flow? Like, when am I most likely to feel that way? And so the one quick way of looking at this is to think about what drains your energy and what fuels your energy. So the exercise, which we can do as a group if we want, is to kind of do a little T-chart with 2 columns: drains my energy, fuels my energy.
Yep.
And just like quickly, like, go down that list on each side. Like, what kinds of things? And you could talk about context, like, what is the setting? What are the types of people? What are the activities? What are the things that you feel like when you're there in that space doing those things, it feels like it's unmotivating. It's like anti-flow. Whereas other things when those conditions are in place, you really feel like you are your best, most competent self, and like time slows down.
Would flow also be, like, I'm just thinking about like us getting ready for our DEF event last week, the live event, where it's like, I felt like time was just going by so fast. We get there at, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then it's just it's showtime right away. So it's like prepping for it. Is that flow? How would you define that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of flow there. I think it depends really on what your perception of it was. Like, in other words, if you're feeling like this is, again, like time slows down, like you kind of imagine, Michael Jordan like going up for a layup, like that giant, typical image of him like leaping across the court, and like he kind of like, it's usually slowed down in a clip, but it almost seems like he hangs in the air, right? So that's that feeling, like you're so in the moment that time is like not even a factor. So that could have been what was going on. I mean, I guess you guys were really into what you were doing. You were feeling like you knew where you needed to be and what you needed to do, and time moves quickly. I mean, the opposite is when you're doing something that you hate and it feels like it can, imagine sitting in class, right? When you're in high school or whatever, and you're looking at the clock, you're like, when will this math class be over? That's kind of like the anti-flow experience.
And so once people write out their flow states, so the things that fuel energy and the things that drain energy,
right?
And how long should they spend on that, and how many things should they write approximately?
I mean, for right now, you just spend a minute, put 2 or 3 or 4 things down. We're not doing the full blown exercise here. It's more of just a taste. But the next step after that is to say, like, ask yourself, what's one small thing that you can do this week to either reduce a drain or increase the fuel? So, and because this is another insight that I tend to bring to these conversations, and that I also observe, in my own work too, which is that it's tempting to think that the only changes that really have an effect are big, giant, transformational changes, huge new habits that require you to change your life, change your whole day. I'm going to start doing bullet journals. Like, I've never done that before, but now I have, a whole process that I need to learn. These can be great things, but they can be very hard to implement. Like, habits like that are hard to start. So I'm a big fan of incremental change. Like, if Jared, if you were saying, like, what, that motorcycle ride was so empowering and so incredible, and I joined the rest of the day in a completely new mindset, I'm going to put on my calendar now, every other day or every day, whenever you can, 10-minute bike ride. Or, I find personally, just as an example for me, that if I don't get out of the house and just like move a little bit, even just for a few minutes, take a walk before I sit down at the computer in the morning, the rest of the day is, it's not totally shot, but it's harder. It's harder. Something about the way the day starts really has a big impact on how it continues and what you're able to bring to it. So those kinds of things. And then, make those little incremental changes. Before you know it, you have a whole collection of practices that you're finding will get you more in a position to experience that flow state.
I love that. So should we actually take a minute and like do the exercise? I would love to
go for it.
do that.
Like
Great.
Probably been doing it already as well.
Same.
Great. And people that are here with us in the live stream, we certainly invite you to do this as well. And then if anybody wants to share some of the things that fuel your energy and drain your energy, you might be able to get some real-time coaching from Nick here. So great. So I'll keep an eye on the time. Why don't we do, how much time, Nick? Like a minute?
Yeah, just put a minute down.
Okay. All right.
I love that.
Do you guys have some already that you noted?
Drain and fuel.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. A little bit. I'm really trying to like reflect a bit more and think, okay, specifically what is it about that drain? Like, it's not enough to just say, meetings drain me. It's like, well, which meetings? What I do a lot of different types of meetings. What are there particular meetings that and which is it, that whole meeting or just part of that meeting that is the drain?
Right.
Trying to sort of think more to that level, because that incremental change, I don't think it would be a fair solution to say, don't do meetings anymore.
Right.
Like,
let me ask you this. What is it about meetings do you think that you find draining?
Well, that's what I'm trying to think about. And I think some of it is regular cadence meetings that are just, say, a weekly meeting that maybe there's nothing to speak on each week. Right. And I'm turning up at that meeting and I don't, after a certain moment, now I've got 6 or 7 of those a week. And do I really need to, oh, time's up. Do I need to be at all of those every week? Can some of them get punted? And if they can, is there a way that I can respectfully say, hey, we don't need to have a meeting this week?
Right. It sounds like one of the things about meetings that you find draining is when they don't have a clear value to you. They don't have a clear purpose. They're kind of routine, and you don't really feel like they're worth the time, quite frankly. So maybe one option is to try to get out of some of the ones that you could get out of. But another option might be to think about, well, how do you bring more value? How do you invite the group that you're meeting with, either in the moment or, on a regular basis, in terms of that sort of regular scheduled meeting, to maybe reinvent the focus of the meeting so that it is more valuable to everybody. My guess is others feel the same.
That's a really good point. I try to get a little bit more structured at times with a bit more agenda ahead of it. And I try to make it, you get through the agenda in 15 minutes, great. Let's tap out. We don't need the other 15 minutes or.
Right.
Yeah. What about something that fuels energy for anyone?
Yeah, I'd love to see some fuel.
I have lots of fuel. I would say making art for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of art?
I went to school for painting, so painting or drawing or something where I'm using my hand and not staring at the digital screen would be great.
Love that.
And do you find time to do that on a regular basis?
Not enough time. But it was my top goal year. I did a drawing class in January, and I have been meaning to do one every month. So I need to get back to it.
Is there a smaller way that you could do it? Like, how would you fit in some art making in the course of let's say, like even when you just you're just feeling it, like a day is going hard, or it's been a lot of meetings or something, you've had setbacks, and you think, I really need to bring some energy lift in. Is there a way that you could just kind of open up just enough space to do that for a few minutes?
So, definitely. I mean, someone said to me that they always just keep a blank notepad next to their desk or on their desk, and just doodle throughout the day.
Right.
That's cool.
I don't know if I'm a great doodler, but
I think my challenge. Go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I've heard the advice of, even if you just say, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes, I'm going to exercise for 5 minutes, I'm going to paint for 5 minutes, I'm going to do whatever it is I want to do for 5 minutes. It's a very surmountable amount of time. So it's not like this huge activation energy where I've got to carve out all this time and then it keeps getting punted throughout the day and then not happening. But oftentimes, if you do the 5 minutes, you're like, oh, this is really great, I want to keep going. It's just that getting in there that's
just
tough.
Getting started.
Just starting. Yep.
My fallacy I struggle with is on a tough day, like you described, Nick, having a rough day, do this 5-minute activity, is no, I don't give myself permission to do that 5-minute activity, because if I'm having a tough day and I haven't made enough progress, keep going, dig back in. You haven't earned this yet. You got to get some more done. I got a voice that tells me that. And so doing the thing which would be off the screen, which is similar to Erica, I enjoy activities like that. I'm not giving myself permission, and I go deeper into the screen and I keep pushing until I get somewhere, and then you're just exhausted, and then maybe you don't even have the energy for the 5 minutes off the screen. So very hard to step away from it. Yeah,
Jared, we would need to try to figure out where that voice is coming from. Who is that voice? And we don't need to do it here in front of the world, but yeah, no, I mean, that is actually a great segue or opening into this idea of inner critics or inner saboteurs. There are all kinds of ways of referring to that voice, and I think we've become accustomed to feeling like, well, that's the part of ourselves that really wants us to succeed. And maybe that's true. There are some voices that are constructive in that way, but those ones that are stopping you from finding fuel, finding a moment to do the healthier thing that would probably unlock more productivity, that maybe comes from something else. It's serving you in some way, but it's interesting to think about, whether it's really serving you in this moment.
Yeah. No, I
and how does one tell them to piss off?
Yeah,
I mean, the way you do that, I mean, there are ways, right?
Yeah.
First, you personify it. You give it a name. You can, and it can be a character from a movie or a book, or it can be a real person in your life,
Jerk
or just
Jared.
something that you make up. Yeah, right. Jerk Jared, exactly. And you say, "Shut up, Jerk Jared." Like, not now, Jerk Jared. I mean, I
love it.
I have there's a space in my brain where all those doubts and concerns and anxieties love to kind of jump in, and just even saying "not now" is so powerful. Like, just not now. Like, I'm not invalidating that concern. I'm not saying it's not true that I should do this, should do that, shouldn't do this, but not now. I'm focusing on this other thing. And it's like, that for me, that's a really powerful tool to use.
I love that. I'm just seeing what some other people have written in. We got JD Gimzek. I have a sketchbook that I bring with me when I go out, and then I take a few minutes to do a quick sketch of the immediate environment when I get to where I'm going, even sitting in the car or at the table if I'm getting a coffee or something to eat.
Really cool.
I love that.
That's fun.
That's great. And it sounds like you really made that a habit. Like, that's something that you do. Like, that's your identity. Like, I'm the guy, or I'm the person that goes out to the cafe with my sketchbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Love that.
I love that.
I like Taze as well. I'm going to highlight that one. Personal flow. He mentions a workflow state as well, but cooking and baking. I love that too. Good, different muscle. I don't cook or bake successfully, but I like the idea of it. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah.
It's off the screen too. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you have the benefit of having something delicious to eat afterwards too.
You get an end
That's
product too.
Built-in reward.
Yeah.
In my case, you don't get that, but it's,
Well, if they want to play hockey with a hockey puck, then you've made a new
I've baked a puck.
Yeah, you baked a puck. And then Tay, you also shared. I watched this a while back from Big Think, and it was super insightful on the topic of flow and flow states.
That's in the comments, so you'll be able to link through to that one too.
Yeah, thank you.
People, I love that.
Yeah.
Tay's on fire today. I did want to call this out real quick. Workflows, flow states, deep in a design project, spending hours when you're excited about a concept so you can come to life, but also the mindless production work can be flow-like. I think that's pretty cool when you do just have to kind of crank. There is some manual labor involved, but you know what you got to do, and you're just going for it. The mouse is working, time's kind of flying by, and you're just working to get it completed, and you can kind of flow through that too. I like that you can find joy in both those tasks when they are kind of somewhat different, but both design related and both part of your work time. Yeah.
I mean, I would definitely encourage folks, and this is certainly important from a career development standpoint, whether you're in a job and thinking about your next thing, or between jobs and thinking about the next one. The work always starts with, like, where am I happiest? What do I really want? What do I want next? And it can be hard if you haven't been thinking about it all along to kind of think back and go, well, where was I happiest? Like, sometimes when I work with clients and I say, like, what are your values? What is your purpose from a career development standpoint? It's hard for them to kind of conjure those answers. So I would definitely encourage people to, if you find yourself in that flow state, whether it's the production work or design project, whatever it is, and you notice that you're really just like feeling present in it, and like time is shifting in that way, like, make a note of it. What was happening just then? And capture it, because you will likely want to ask yourself that question later, and it'll be good to have the answer.
I love that. What a great note to end on, Nick. Thanks so much for all your beautiful pearls of wisdom and your energy and your expertise and just your humanity and just your wonderfulness. It's been so nice to have you on Design Unfiltered. And how can people get in touch with you if they want to engage you for coaching, or how should people reach you?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest, best way. I'm there a lot, as you mentioned. Like, I'm posting all kinds of weird things all the time and old pictures from my past. So you can definitely count on more of those coming. Find me on LinkedIn and we can go from there.
Awesome.
All right. And we have that. This is awesome. You here.
Yes.
LinkedIn.com/in/Nick Gould.
Yeah.
There you go. Connect, reach out.
Yeah.
Very.
I feel like...
Oh, go on, Erica.
Oh, I gonna say, I feel like we could have just done another hour, talked about
Easily.
values.
I know.
How to
I'll come
determine
back.
your value.
Yeah, we hope you will come back someday. And thanks everybody for joining. It was so great to see everybody here, and I hope you got some good stuff from that exercise and from this whole hour. But I hope you can take that and find out where your flow is, and remember what makes you hum, and to bring that forth in your own lives. Yeah.
To use it. Thanks everyone.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
See you next time.
Bye.
See you.